My name is Jess. I'm going to be discussing the American habit of overeating and obesity. To give you a little background information, as you probably know, obesity rates in America have increased quickly and significantly just within our lifetimes. In 1988, when the CDC began surveying the nation for obesity, they found that less than 5% of the population was obese. Today, 35.7% of Americans are classified as obese, which medically means they have a body mass index, or a ratio of their weight to their height, of more than 30%. My proposition is that the rise in American obesity rates is a direct result of the increasing trend in America to overeat. Now, obesity is a fairly popular topic. It's been discussed on a national level, and it's popularly attributed to an increasingly sedentary lifestyle. However, there is little evidence to support this. According to the National Health, Blood, and Lung Association, over the past 25 years, American activity levels have remained relatively constant. The real issue at hand is that the average American's calorie intake has significantly increased. The Center for Disease Control's 2012 survey shows that the modern American consumes 2,800 calories per day, which is a 24.5% increase from their 1970 counterpart. This parallels the 20% rise in obesity rates over the same time period. Now, knowing we eat more is important, but given how little attention there has been on this, it's hard for the average American to know if calorie intake really has increased. The increase in calorie intake can be seen in three factors. First, Americans have adopted a mentality best described by the McDonald's coined phrase, "supersize me." It means that food now sold at the grocery store comes in larger portions. Portion sizes at restaurants and fast food restaurants have increased. And have increased over the past 25 years. People are eating more larger in every sitting. This is important because of our second factor. Americans eat out more today than they did 25 years ago. Instead of a rare occurrence, most Americans eat out weekly. And this exposes the average diner to larger portions more frequently, and with the supersize mentality, it creates pressure to overeat in order to get your money's worth out of every meal. Thirdly, last factor, on top of these three typical meals, Americans now snack more often and on a larger scale than in the past. American typical snacks have increased as portion sizes have increased, and this adds extra calories into your daily diet that are often ignored. These factors of increasing calorie intake lead to excessive weight gain, and they are often ignored over distraction looking at our levels of physical activity. The significant increase in calorie intake is very real, very important, and it is why most Americans are getting heavier. 35.7% of them are becoming obese. Yearly surveys done by the CDC have shown that obesity rates have risen 20% since 1988. This increase over the past 25 years is due to the general trend to overeat because of larger portions, an irresponsible attitude towards portion control and calorie intake, and an increase in the amount of food eaten daily.
Right, the proposition is stated. You do a little bit of attempt to create some controversy by diminishing the potential competing explanation about activity. Although there may in fact be other arguments on this point, I think that you're trying to find an argument here, and I think you've got a good explanation. I don't think anybody doubt. Look, more calories in people are going to get fatter unless their activity goes up. If their activity stayed the same, then that's going to be the explanation. It's increased caloric intake. The question is, why do we have that increased caloric intake? And you seem to be suggesting that there's been a change in the culture that's occurred. And I think that's an interesting argument, and I think that really ought to be your claim. You start organizing, but most of the organization is really internal on the points that you're presenting. It's not really about the structure of your speech. It's like these are the points that explain all of these things, and as you get to each point that you're going to talk about, you come back to those 3 points and you kind of repeat them as explanations of the individual points. And so it gets a little bit convoluted in the structure as opposed to building to an inevitable conclusion. It seems like we're reviewing the same idea a couple of times over. I think you need stronger data on the changes in the caloric intake and especially on that first point where you're talking about the lack of activity not being an adequate explanation. That seems so counterintuitive that I definitely think that you need a lot more information on that point, and that it ought to be its own separate point as opposed to just background information. I thought you did a very nice job presenting the information, but some of the content is a little underdeveloped. I'm going to kind of rush a little bit because we do have a couple more people to hear from, and